If you grew up in a land as a foreign ethnicity, it is so important to maintain and catch up on the culture of your origins, and let me tell you why. For those who don't know me, I am ethnically Chinese and I was born in France. So my parents came in France to study for university, and they chose to stay and change their citizenship to French. And as a Chinese, what I have noticed a lot in France is that most of my peers who are Chinese born in France, so second generation, I can observe that they are really well integrated in the French population. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a very, very positive thing to be well integrated. Now, the issue is that they are mostly a bit lacking in terms of inheriting the culture of their parents. And that is the most likely side effect of growing in a foreign land is you kind of grew in an environment that results in self-hate and self-doubt around your own culture. I'm not going to dive too deep in the why, but I'm going to explain why it is important to catch up on your mother culture as a foreign ethnicity. Now that's where the spiritual aspect of this channel comes up, because I'm going to explain what's happening when your culture is not very well inherited and what happens at a higher level and more invisible aspect. I'm going to apply my ethnicity as an example, but it can be applied to any other kind of ethnicity or culture. So if I'm born Chinese, which is the case, what happens is that my higher self will speak Chinese. My guides and my spiritual allies will mostly be Chinese as well, with a strong culture-oriented Chinese style. Which means that if your physical self is not aligned or doesn't integrate well the culture of your origins, well, out of the bat, you're already out of alignment. You are not connected to yourself, your most high self, and your guides. You are not connected to your ancestors, which is essential in most cultures, except maybe the Western world, where we cannot lose this worship of ancestors. If you want to know what the ancestors do for you, make sure to comment below, let me know, and I will make a video explanation about it. But basically what happens is like they help you. They help you for a lot of things in life. Now, as you can guess, there will be a lot of miscommunication between those allies and yourself, between the higher self and yourself. And in the end, by being so out of alignment, you will kind of drift away from this heritage, and you will have to build it up again by yourself and then pass it down to your next generations. Because we often say how cultural wealth is so important, and we have to keep it, we have to conserve it, at some point. Not necessarily all of it, but a big part of it. But we don't really explain why, and here's my explanation on the spiritual side. And as you slowly start to drift away, you and your descendants will be isolated as spirits. And what happens is that you'll have to build the whole foundation again, a foundation that has been made for millennia. In other words, at death, when you return as a spirit, you're not necessarily joined back your ancestors or your guides or your spiritual family. You will be kind of isolated and vulnerable, which is something we don't want, but I'm not going to dive too deep into that, as I'm not sure what kind of audience will watch this video. But I'm going to give you some tips on how to catch up to your mother culture before it's too late. Firstly, And that's the basic minimum, is to learn the language. The language shapes the culture, so it's really important to know how to speak fluently your mother language. Now, it doesn't need to be super advanced, but you should be able to speak casually with friends and families. Secondly, you should be interested in your mother's culture's history. Get to understand what your ancestors have been through and what they have achieved in life. Getting to know the environment they lived in is also extremely important in terms of social structure. Did they live in an empire, a kingdom? Was it a tribe? Because those aspects will be reflected in the higher realms. In my example as a Chinese, I noticed that it resembles something that looks more like an empire kind of structure, where the big boss is the Jade Emperor, who is, in terms of Chinese Taoist mythology, the emperor of the celestial realms. Another example is that Chinese people have lived in a Confucianist society for a long time, and it is also reflected in the spiritual world. On a personal note, my spiritual guide is kind of like my spiritual master, who I have extreme obedience and respect. So as you can see, in the spiritual world, we also have this master and disciple relationship that looks a lot like those relationship you have in those martial arts series. Going back to connecting with your roots, another thing I had in mind was to ask your parents or grandparents, or you see if you still have them, your great grandparents. That will be even better. For me, my grandparents left very early, so I didn't get to ask them, but I asked my aunts and uncles about my ancestors, and I got some very interesting information. That's all I had in mind for now. If you have some more ideas to connect with your roots that I didn't bring up, feel free to comment. Also, let me know in comments if there are specific aspects I talked about in this video that are not very clear to you, and I can make a video explanation about it. Thanks for watching. Bye.